that was a fabulous session by Sue, Shelley, and Belinda. A few takeaways for me that I got out of that. One, that obviously not one size fits all, but it means that, through the efforts within the recruiting, obviously diversity of thought is natural to occur. And that happens through lived experiences. And so you don't have to be a techie to get into cyber. So I really do like what you said about that, Shelley. Active and more targeted campaigns when it comes to retention and also recruitment. It's important that we think about that. And that, the industry is changing. Not cyber in particular, but there's a lot of industry shifts when it comes to employment, and a lot of people that are having second careers or upskilling. And so you got to be bold, ask the questions, be deliberate in what you are looking for. Don't be afraid to pull somebody aside. Even people in leadership. Like I said, I am the Chief Information Security Officer at Interact Corp. And so if there's an interest in a particular field, in a particular job, just take leaders and whoever you see that is, before you, and just ask those questions, because you never know where it lands. And I think for me, the last one was that, we have to do a better job of changing and adjusting the language when it comes to job descriptions so that it's not a deterrent. Because if I'm hiring for somebody in governance and risk, what do I need? Somebody with a computer science background, right? And that tends to be sort of the default education requirement. But again, there's lived experiences that we can pull from that can apply to the roles, because it's really about the aptitude and the attitude on the individuals that we really want to be able to have in the organizations. So really good on that. Okay, so we are moving on to the next topic. I'd like to welcome to the stage our next guests, Adriana Gliga-Belavic, Sharon Russell, Maria Koslonova, and Saniga Kushik. This panel is sponsored by MNP Digital, and it's, that's right, MNP Digital, and it's entitled Data Governance and Their Imperative. So looking forward to hearing you ladies and what you have to say about that, and see you when you're done. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today, both here in person and also for those who dialed in virtually. So we have a kind of a mixed setup today. So we have our colleague up there and the three of us. So I guess I wanted to say thank you to the organizer, to CyberX. They've been amazing at keeping us engaged and creating this network for us over the last 2 years and expanding the reach across, beyond the Canadian borders. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Adriana Gliga-Belavic. I'm one of the leaders in the cybersecurity and privacy team at MNP Digital. And I lead the privacy and data protection practice there. And I'll be the moderator for the session today. Who is MNP Digital? You might not have heard of us. We are a proudly Canadian organization providing professional services across the country. We have more than 100 offices very close to communities. We focus on mid-market, and we provide services such as technology advisory and digital transformation, applied data, AI and machine learning innovation, and obviously cybersecurity and privacy. And with me today, I have three amazing women who I've known for a long time, are good friends and leaders on their own in this field. So I'm going to ask to introduce themselves, so we'll start with Sharon.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Yep, sorry. My name is Sharon Russell, and I am the head of IT security, compliance, and privacy at CloudDX. And this is a small digital health company. And just for some background, I have over 10 years experience in privacy and over 20 years experience in IT and technology. And my background is on the business side, so I am not technical. I am high-level technical. I am not a techie, and so I bring the business side, and I align it, and I connect it, and I integrate it with the tech side of the business.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dakashik, and I'm a manager at M&P, part of this privacy and data protection practice. So I lead the privacy and data protection services here at M&P. I've been in the industry for almost over a decade. I bring a bit of a blend of both technical and business background. So I started my career initially actually at Seneca College, and my background was very technical, and then I slowly transitioned into moving to more like the business side. And now, after over 10 years, I feel like being on the stage with some amazing women, I feel like I've made it. So looking forward to this session.
Thank you. And Maria, joining us from London, England.
Now. I've been in privacy for about 10 years. Right now, I'm a data privacy lead at Chainalysis. We're a blockchain solution company that provides ransomware detection for cryptocurrency. So I lead data protection alongside with our privacy council here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, and I thought what better way to start our conversation about data today than share with you a few data points. And these are coming from predictions about the state of data in 2021 from Forbes. So from 2010 to 2020, the data that was created, captured, or used in the world increased from 1.2 trillion gigabytes to 59 trillion gigabytes. So it's quite interesting to know what's going to happen next. So the prediction is that in the next 3 years, we will have captured more data than in the past 30. We are going to have more than 5 billion internet users by 2023, 29.3 billion of web-connected devices by 2023. The industrial IoT connections are going to get to about 37 billion. 1.4 billion of smart home devices will be shipped around the world by 2024. And the wearables, who all of us got so attached to, will be in the 640 million devices that we'll be wearing. So what are organizations doing about it? So obviously, everybody wants to capture the value of this data. So we see 75% of enterprises will use new external data sources in the next couple of years to make better decisions about their products and how to service their customers. And if we look at the amount of investment that organizations are going to make, there is expected about $6.8 trillion to be allocated to direct digital transformations of organizations. But then we can look at the other side of the story. So only in 2021, the cost of cybercrime worldwide was about $6 trillion. And as we have seen in the last 2 years, ransomware events have been increasing exponentially, and we've seen the increase of a cost of a ransomware going about 1,500%. So today, with my panel, we are going to tackle this big question: how organizations are going to be using this data, getting value of it, and making sure that they deliver on the promise to all the stakeholders. And at the same time, how can they do that by maintaining security and customer trust? So without further ado, I'm going to start by asking my panelists, what are some of the challenges that organizations are facing? We have all this data now, so what do we do about it? And are there opportunities as well for organizations?
So as we know, with the pandemic that came up on us 2 years ago, there was a sudden shift, obviously, to remote working. And with my company and the smaller companies, it was overnight with everybody. So now we're moved to a remote workforce, and we have all of the issues that we've talked about, security, we've got access, we deal with health data, our customers' patients and our customers' health data. So we have the challenges around consent and storing the data, retaining the data, making sure that we're safeguarding the data and the access that we have to the data to support our customers. And then also now coming back to away from remote and moving more back to the office, it's that shift back again. So it's making sure we know where the data is and what the data is as we're doing these heavy lifts back and forth from office to remote back to office space. And understanding that along with that, the responsibilities that we have as an organization to ensure that we're keeping everything safe and that we have the proper security in place. And so we need to ensure that we're not playing catch up, that we are, as these changes happens, that we're implementing smart things to help us stay ahead as we grow, because small companies grow very quickly and small companies grow unevenly. You know, so it's a big balance of ensuring that we're putting in place those security and those privacy pieces, as well as understanding overall data governance, so that all of the different departments in the organization understand the importance, and we're all a team. And as some of the panel said yesterday, you know, our workers are our front line. They're the CISOs of the company. They're the warriors, and just making sure that everybody understands that, because we do have a responsibility with the data that we handle on behalf of our customers.
I think that was a great point, and I would just love to add to it. So like Adriana was also mentioning, you know, data has grown exponentially over the past decade, and most organizations are struggling to handle the data that they have. So some of the key themes that we've seen across our clients is over-collection of information. So all the business units want to do the right thing, but unfortunately, there's a lot of information being collected and limited visibility on some of the levels of controls that need to be implemented to secure that information. So there's a lot of information being collected, which increases the exposure of risk in case of a data breach or an incident. There's also silos between business units. So of course, because of that, that also adds to the complexity of all the amount of data that's within the organization, and lack of awareness and training on how to securely manage and handle that information, but also implement the right level of controls. So I would just like to say, I think that was wonderful points, and maybe I'll hand it over back to Adriana, and maybe Maria, if she has anything to add to it.
No, that's great. I think I'm going to pass it on to Maria.
Thank you. So I agree with everything that's been said so far. Just to add, some of the other challenges that organizations, including ours, that's seeing right now is there's uncertainty and continuous changes in regulations and laws that are coming up, like on the US side, changes in laws that are coming out on the European side with, you know, enhancing transporter data flows. This creates a really strong challenge on organizations, the need to allocate spending and budgets, and also really to try to secure that funding to continue to comply with privacy laws that are coming about. From a global perspective, additional challenges that is around uncertainty of the EU-US data flows. There have been frameworks, there are discussions around what's to come in the next potential year, but it still hasn't been released to the public, and companies are anxiously awaiting to enable to continue the transnational flow of data, especially for global businesses. In terms of how organizations can support this, I think it's really important to take a look and to understand what is in scope and what isn't in scope for your company. Like, what regulations do you have to follow? What impacts you? Really taking that risk-based approach. How are you defining personal data as a business? What are the definitions that imply to you? And then what are the downstream implications of it? Also, part of the challenge, as I mentioned earlier, with all the new regulations coming out, the challenge is around supporting of resources. The more requirements you need to comply with, the more the funding that you have to put together to hire a privacy team or to outsource to external counsel perhaps to build out your program. But then also some of the challenges that we continue to see is really just enabling that leadership buy-in and taking that risk-based approach and making sure that you're utilizing the privacy-enhancing technologies. I think the challenge that we're seeing right now, as Adriana mentioned earlier, there's so much data, and as a business, when you don't know what data you have, it's really hard to comply. So part of it is using those technologies that will help you to automate your data discovery, but also your data compliance obligations.
Thank you so much for that. And I guess we'll just continue there. So, we talked about you have to do all these things to understand your data. So what are some of the best practices from a data governance perspective that can help organizations achieve their objectives? So maybe we'll start with you, Snigdha.
Okay, no, sounds great. So I think one of the key things for organizations is to get the senior leadership buy-in. It's really important for the senior leadership to support the overall data governance program. And once you have that, then you can define some of your roles and responsibilities, accountabilities, and ownership for that data governance program. With that also comes the responsibility of course, developing frameworks, the right framework for your organization. Not one size fits all, so of course looking at the size of the organization, defining the specific requirements that work for your industry, for your business, and of course the legislation that applies to your organization, and based on that developing a framework. So you have your framework set out. Collaboration. Collaboration is very important to ensure there is consistency across the different processes that are being implemented and followed across the different business units. Just to make sure you're not increasing the overall risk by creating new processes within those business units. Once you have that, you have training and awareness, of course, training your employees on the good practices of handling, storing, sharing some of this information. And also, finally, I would say developing your KRIs and KPIs to ensure that you're managing and monitoring the overall success of your data governance program.
Sharon?
So I would just like to add, back again, what we've been saying is knowing what data you have and knowing where it is the base of everything. Because if you know what you have and you know how it travels through your organization and where it's kept, then you can be knowing how to use it and how to safeguard it, but also that should you even have it. And if you shouldn't have it, then the steps and the pieces you need to get rid of it. The other part of it is being in a small organization, I'm a team of two, and so it's being not always the bad cop. And again, we talked about this yesterday. It's building that relationship with the business units to help them do their business and to be the coach and to be the mentor and to explain why it's important that we do this data governance and around the frameworks that we're putting in place so that they can benefit from them, because we should be helping them drive. So it's our job to help push them forward and to give them what they need so that they can make better business decisions.
All very good points. And I talk to boards and audit committees quite a bit. And around data, we always have findings around data. And the question that I get the most is, where do you start? Some organizations are so complex. It's such a huge undertaking that organizations are just frozen, don't know where to start. And I always say, you don't have to start with everything. Start small. Figure out what is the most important data that you have in your organization and start there. Understand your business processes, understand the data life cycle. Then put together your data classification standards. Because what we see in organizations, there is no data classification standards. There are no guidelines across the organization on how to implement those standards in the systems. So start with that. And then you can expand to include other types of data in the future and as you mature your program. And one other point I wanted to make, and this could be an opportunity as well for organizations, especially if you work for an organization that went through an incident. You created such an awareness within the organization about what data you have, where the most sensitive information is within the organization. So don't stop at responding to that incident. Use the fact that you had that incident, that there is awareness at the leadership level, and then push for those things to happen. Push for understanding your environment better, understanding the legislation better that you need to comply with, and building things that are agile within your processes to be able to address them in the future. So since we've talked about all this data, maybe I'll start with Maria. So if we do all these things, we build our data governance processes and procedures, how is that going to help enable organizations to do more innovation? So Maria, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I think, you know, as we look at building out our compliance program, I think when we look towards innovation, we really need to start moving the conversation from are we compliant with privacy laws to are we really doing the right thing as a company and are we being responsible with our data? And I think part of it is really embracing an ethically driven approach to enabling our data subjects whose data we collect and process, but really trying to understand like what data we process as an organization, like what are our current and future initiatives that we're trying to push out, what are some of the products, how are we really trying to scale as a business, and then also how are we using our data privacy strategy and how it needs to pivot as the business continues to evolve, whether we're acquiring new products, whether we're building new technologies, and really making sure that privacy is at the forefront of those discussions. I would say another point that we need to consider is how do we build a culture of trust? Part of it is assessing at the enterprise where do we need to further embed privacy by design. And then we look at data ethics and the responsibility as part of the entire data lifecycle. So as we continue to use innovation for whether it's using AI, artificial intelligence, or big data, we have to look at data throughout the entire life cycle and look at all implications. So for example, like at the acquisition stage, are we looking at all the data sets? Are we aware of potential weaknesses, limitations, and biases that we're capturing? And if we're looking at the processing stage, are we looking at like the algorithms? Are we considering if the people whose data we're processing, like how would they react to the decisions that we're making with their information? And then also, how are we considering the impact on our customers? So if we're a specific organization that's working with very vulnerable individuals, are we considering our impact on them and if the risk is much higher potentially? So as we innovate, we have to think of potentially considering a set of principles that really capture our general ethical profile as a business. So not only do we want to continue to enhance our financials, but we also want to be seen as a responsible and accountable and transparent organization and is open to those discussions. So part of it is really facilitating those discussions internally with the business, but also being open and transparent with your users.
I'd just like to add on that also is from the operational side of it, it's changing the narrative and moving that data governance, security, and privacy are cost centers in the organization. They're business enablers. They allow us to be differentiators. And so engaging the different business units and having the conversations that we're here for you and what can we do and how can we do it and how can we get this data properly, ethically, and know what we have and how we can use it and work with the different business units to ensure that they're able to take advantage of it and using that to innovate and to do things differently. That there's data, you know, can be used for so many things, good things, and from a business point of view, but research, you know, health data, being able to use it for research. But you have to do it properly, and we need to not think of all of these things as, oh, it's the compliance team, oh, it's the security team, oh, it's the privacy team, oh, data governance, yeah, they're just more rules that we have to do. It's not, we should be sitting at the table. We should be sitting when we're developing new products, as Maria said, and part of that privacy is designed to understand what the needs are so that we can turn around and ensure that that data is available. If we don't have it today, how do we get it? If we have it but we don't have permission for it, then what do we need to do to turn around and get that consent? We can drive the business, and so that narrative has to change. We can grow the business, we can enable the business, we just have to be at the table. So we need to start being pushy. We need to just start making sure that we're there and having the conversations. In the hallway, oh, you're doing something new. Oh, yeah, that would be, I'd really love to hear about that. You know, with the VP at the executive level where you can't, well, we should really think about it that way. Or have you thought about this? You know, if we were able to do this and start those little pieces of conversation that gain interest so that they are going to ask you to the table, or just pull up a chair and sit down if you can. Have them tell you you can't be there, and then ask them, well, why shouldn't I be here? And as soon as they tell you why, you should be able to come back very quickly and say, oh, yeah, but look at this, 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 and this, and then you'll be at the table.
Very good points, and I thought we were chatting about this before the session, and we talked about you know, how do you make engineers and data scientists aware? So training them ahead of time, making sure that when you build that program, you create the awareness. So when they actually start developing the solution or they think of innovation, they have that mindset. And a lot of times when I work with data scientists or with machine learning models developer, or I review models with them, I start asking them, so what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve? And have you thought about using this type of data versus that type of data to achieve that objective? And most times I see them looking at me and it's like, oh, I never thought about it that way, because they are used to getting lots of data and then using that data. But once you open their eyes and once they have the awareness on how they can do different things, then that actually enables them to innovate even more. So Maria, we talked about legislation and what's changing. And we've seen lots of changes coming out from European Union. Now we see them happening all over the world. So what are some of the key trends, and how they can impact the data governance for organizations?
It's a really good question, and a big pain point that I keep seeing across every conference, every meeting with everybody. But I think you know, some of the biggest challenges that we're seeing right now globally, and I alluded to this earlier, is around the uncertainty of international data flows. It's been an ongoing battle since 2015, and even prior, when the EU-US Safe Harbor got invalidated, and then that followed by the invalidation of Privacy Shield, and then, you know, the reliance on the standard contractual clauses by organization. In March of this year, we got exciting news of a potential new framework, a press release that was released by the European Commission and the US, that they are developing a framework. While we still have not seen this framework, it's set to be created with a shared vision and commitment to data protection and law, and really providing the redress to and mechanisms for individuals to enable their data subject access requests, and to give assurances to organizations that are sending their data cross-border that it won't be subject to unauthorized disclosures to law enforcement. However, no details have been released yet, and we can inevitably expect that this is going to be challenged by Schrems and his organization. But so that's one component. What's interesting about this is that while it's still uncertain, the trans-border data flows, organizations are still continuing to send data internationally, and then they're still continuing to rely on the Privacy Shield and the data that was certified against it, and then also just leveraging the SCCs. I would say there's also another challenge is continuous uncertainty with regulations as well. So this started with GDPR years ago, but now there's a patchwork of global privacy laws. So for global organizations, compliance becomes a huge nightmare. You have to have a part of your business that's continuously dedicated to really just following all the developments. So whether it's what's happening in Europe and the implications that's happening in North America as a result of it, like all the laws that are coming up from GDPR to CCPA, CPRA, and all the acronyms that we can think of, it really forces you to try to understand how all of this will impact your business. So you have to comply, like you have no choice, but you have to take a risk-based approach. What does compliance look like for us? How do we automate compliance? How do we outsource, but not outsource our accountability, but how do we ensure that our data subjects globally are able to feel confident in our accountability for data protection and privacy? I would say there are a lot more changes coming in Canada, certainly in Asia Pacific and elsewhere globally. But what's interesting, we're now living in a place where companies are now relying heavily on automated privacy solutions. So they're no longer building their privacy programs through spreadsheets or through Google Docs, which creates a bit of a pain, but they're really trying to think about privacy as its own domain and really trying to automate programs. So create those frameworks that Snigdha had mentioned, use the risk-based approach, really try to understand your data, try to understand all your implications, and then try to build out for differences with regulations as they come, but really establish a strong team of lawyers, of privacy operations specialists, of privacy engineers that are focused on a continuous goal and really try to invest that into a business. Why this is important is because for a lot of companies that are starting up, for them, they are going to struggle to get customers, they're going to struggle to get funding if their privacy program is not at the level that it should be. So more changes to come, and certainly it's a problem we're all struggling with. How do you comply? Where do you start? But I think it's just a matter of just starting. You have to just start somewhere.
No, very, very good points. And maybe I will ask my panelists here on site. We are in Canada. Canada, we have different levels of legislation. We have seen quite a few changes already happening or projections to happen. So it's quite a complex environment already. So what do we see in Canada?
Maybe I can start. Some of the things that we've actually seen with the organizations we've been working with is struggling to understand the legislation that's applicable to them. So obviously for Canada, you have the federal level of legislation, but you also have provincial level. And organizations almost always sort of struggle to understand what requirements they have to comply with, how stringent they need to be with the level of controls that need to be implemented at the data level. Are they going to be in compliance with the legislation, but as well as secure the data while mitigating the key risks that they have? So that's one of the key things we've seen, and that as a result slows down their business operations now because they're struggling and scrambling to figure out what's the right fit, what's the best approach for their organization.
Okay, good points. And one other thing that I noticed, organizations are really struggling to figure out, because of all these changes that are happening, how they are going to harmonize this. What legislation they are going to be compliant with, or how they build their frameworks. Should they look at the most stringent legislation? Would that apply everywhere? How much money is going to cost? Is it actually going to improve my security within an organization? So it's quite an interesting time for organizations. And then how do I build flexibility within the programs to make sure that I can answer to all these changes? So maybe the next question I will pose to the panel, we can't have privacy without security. Now, if we focus on building better data governance into our organizations, how that can help us actually mature both our privacy and security programs. We want to start with you, Sharon.
Okay. So with the organization I'm with now, we don't separate. We can't separate privacy, security, compliance, data governance. We're not big enough. I don't have a big enough team. I don't have enough hours in the day. So our approach is to look at building out a program and to look at building out our organization, understanding the laws and the regulations that we have to abide by. So we've got the federal laws and we've got the provincial health laws, and also looking at the privacy laws, looking at how that all fits in with our business, and trying to build out, just build out the steps of understanding what we need from each program, and piece by piece, little by little, work at it. You're not going to do everything the first time through. It's an iterative, it's a journey. So identify those critical pieces first, start working them through. Education is huge, and then slowly add to it. So one of the things that we're doing this year is we're moving towards doing our SOC audit, and this is a big move for the company, because part of my role is to be formalizing all of these programs and to be putting it into place so that we can build on it. So our first goal is to do a SOC audit, and we're picking the specific areas that we need to be doing, knowing that this is our line in the sand, this is our benchmark, and from there we can grow. And as the company goes through and understand for the SOC and what's involved from the sales side of how we can use it as a tool for selling, from the customer support and the DevOps and all of the different business units, see how it can be supporting them, and then we move that forward a little bit. We add a little bit more. We look at HIPAA, we look at the GDPR, all of the other areas where we want to do business, and we just put a roadmap together, and we just start going through. And we're small, so we are also looking at technology, because I'm not going to get all the people that I need to do it. I have a better business case for bringing in some technology to support me. It costs a lot less to have a couple of different programs or platforms in place than it does to have the resources. So I'm trying very hard to be smart and also work with the executive and make them understand that this is a journey. If you think that at the end of the year, bang, we're going to be compliant, everything's going to be good, and you guys can go on and just work away in your different business units, it's all done and said and it's good, that's not how it works. So I'm taking the company on a journey, and we're taking baby steps and we're taking small steps, and I'm explaining and coaching and educating on the frameworks, on the regulations, and on how we can do it, and we're making it our journey. So it's the company framework, it's not the GDPR framework, it's not the NIST framework, it's our framework, and we're taking all of those pieces that work for us and fit for us, and we're just going to keep evolving it as we go.
Snigdha, do you want to share some of your experiences?
Sure, I'll just add to what Sharon said. She did cover a lot of good points, so I'll be brief. But some of the things that we've seen with our organizations that we work with is enabling innovation, of course, through understanding the type of data that flows within the organization. I think it's really important to know the different data flows that you have, how the data is flowing between different business units, also externally as well, so with your third parties, just so you can understand the complexity as well as the level of controls that will be required to be implemented for safeguarding that data. And that also builds customer trust, so building security and privacy by design and embedding that into your people, process, and technology. What we've also seen as building a good data governance program, it is a challenge. There are success stories. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We have seen clients where they have started a good data governance program, and that's, as a result, helped them with data cost, the overall cost of maintaining data, because now they have developed and they're leveraging good retention policies and standards that they need to comply with, but also good practices for storing that information either internally or with their third parties.
So if there was one thing that we can tell organizations to start doing around data governance, what would that be? Let's start with Maria.
If they were to start doing something right now, I would say the most important thing is if we start speaking the same language. I think the challenge is, there's often a disconnect between your technical teams and your privacy compliance teams. And I think, what we want to do is we really want to cultivate those relationships and make sure that, one, we're speaking the same language, where we're able to translate what the law says into actual business applications. And I think it's really important to ensure that, there's a level of training involved, that privacy has a seat at the table, as Sharon had mentioned, and we're not just sneaking around looking for projects, but we're actually have a seat at the table and we're influencing some of those discussions. I think, it's important to see that we are privacy, when I say we, I mean privacy compliance teams, we really play that supportive role to the business. And it's our responsibility to ensure that we're able to accurately represent what is the risk involved, and then how do we work together with the business to find a solution. So how do we translate what's required to our engineering teams, to our product teams? How do we further incorporate those privacy by design and really understand what are our obligations and how do we address it? And how do we work on creating our own corporate frameworks that actually works for us? What's interesting about Sharon's organizations, as she mentioned, is that security, privacy, they all play a role together. At our company, also security and privacy does play a key role together. So we all understand the common goal. Our goal is to protect our crown jewels, and we have to build out compliance frameworks to support that. We have to understand that if we don't protect the data that we have, that hinders our business operations. We're subject to potential risks. So we want to make sure that we're staying on top of that. And we're not passive about our approach, but we're more determined and more driven, and we're continuously trying to find ways to innovate, but also not to create burden processes on our business. So how do we make compliance easy? How do we create foundations in the world of chaos when it comes to most organizations? And really just understanding the data that you have or you're going to obtain.
Great. Snigdha.
Sure.
10 seconds. We're running out of time.
Okay, I'll try to be very quick. One of the things that we also recommend to our clients is, again, really, we emphasize this a lot and can't emphasize it enough, is understanding the data you have. You can't treat all the data the same way. You can't apply the same level of controls to all the data the same way. You can be very lax with the controls you're implementing, but also cannot be restrictive, because that's going to also affect the business operations. So it's important to understand the data you have and understand the level of sensitivity of that information so you can apply the right level of controls.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm just going to say, we have like a superpower. We're enablers. And if we're working with and we're communicating and we know the data we have, the business can take off, and we need to be on that other side. So we have the opportunity to be enablers, and understanding the data and moving forward and communicating together, we can do great things for the business.
If I can just add, sorry, Adriana, I think the greatest way to determine if you're doing right by compliance, whether it's security or privacy, is talking to anybody in your business. And where I mean, it could be like anyone from marketing, HR, whoever, and if they're able to explain to you what privacy means, what security means, what does their role mean with respect to privacy and security, I think you're further ahead than what a lot of companies are doing. Part of it is really just enforcing that culture, and if you're able to put easy processes in place, if you're able to really train your people, and if they can explain to you why privacy is important or why security is important, I think you're doing quite well already.
Oh, thank you so much for all those good thoughts. And we are at the Women in Cyber conference, so I have to ask these questions. You are all amazing. You are very successful at what you do. So if there is one thing that you would advise someone who wants to join in cybersecurity or privacy as a career, what would that be? Start with you.
So I would say that you don't need to be technical. We need to have people that are strategic thinkers, that understand the business, that can talk the technical talk with the technical people, but can see the bigger picture and can help drive the business. So the technical side of it is important, but if we're going to sit at the table, we need to be able to talk at the table, and that requires us to understand things from the business side and to be able to look at things strategically. So don't be afraid if you're not technical that you can't get into this area. You can't get into cyber, you can't get into technology, privacy, data governance, none of it's, you can do all of that, you just have a different lens, and that's what we need. We need to be able to have multiple lenses sitting at the table.
Snigdha.
I would say come meet us at our booth. Networking, we're obviously all here finally after a while in person. So networking is very important. Just, just really understanding what's out there, what are some of the things that organizations are doing, what good looks like. Networking is very, very important. And I just want to add to what Sharon was saying. So of course, you do not need a technical background, but I also would like to add for people who are quite technical, you can transition from being technical and move on to more management and business level roles because you're able to translate that technical language as long as you're able to do that and simplify it so the leadership does understand and does get the value. You do see the overall, the impact. I think that's very key too, and it's not difficult.
Okay, and quickly, Maria, 10 seconds.
Oh, thank you. I think the most important thing is surround yourself with mentors. I've been very lucky in my career so far that I've worked with some amazing men and women who have really given me the opportunities to really get to where I want to be and put me in some of those uncomfortable situations through some presentations such as this to really speak and really put me in touch with other individuals who are just starting out. Really just don't be scared. Everyone's starting their careers. Do research, understand what's going on in the field. Try to find yourself a mentor, someone who can understand, someone who you can look up to, and someone who you can have actual conversations around career progression. It's a very friendly community, and everyone's really eager to talk about privacy. You'll never run out of things to talk about with people.
And with that, I just wanted to thank our panelists and to you for joining our session today, and move on to the next session, I guess. Thank you.